A Prince of Swindlers, by Guy Boothby. Chapter 4. How Simon Carne won the Derby. Simon Carne, with the Earl of Amberley, Lord Orpington, and the Marquis of Laverstock, went by train to Murford in order to witness a trial of his horse, Knight of Malta, his candidate for the Derby. The most inexperienced critic could scarcely have failed to pick out Knight of Malta as the best among the other participants of the trial, and the horse proved it by winning by more than his own length. "You're a very lucky fellow, Carne," said the Earl of Amberley. "You certainly have one of the prospective winners of the Derby." After the trial they inspected the stables, and then Carne left his guests in the big yard to the enjoyment of their cigars, while he accompanied his trainer into the house for a few moments of chat. "You see what a good horse he is," said Carne's trainer, William Bent. "There's no mistake about that. The horse is as fit as mortal hands can make him, and if he doesn't do his best for you next week, there will be one person surprised in England, and that one will be myself. As you know, sir, the only horse I dread is Vulcanite, and the fact cannot be denied that he's a real clinker." "I take it, then, that the only horse which could beat Knight of Malta is Vulcanite?" "That's so, sir. If he were not in the list, I should feel as certain of seeing you leading your horse back a winner as any man could well be." On looking at his watch, Carne discovered that it was time for him to rejoin his friends and be off to the railway station. That evening Carne dined alone, restless and distracted. At last Ram Gaffu brought him a telegram: 7 Stars Music Hall, Whitechapel Road. 10 o'clock. Carne's spirits lifted. When the servants withdrew, he calculated figures on an envelope, tore them up, and sipped port with quiet satisfaction. The Wiltshire jewel theft was still fresh, Orpington's plate was missing, and London's burglars remained uncaught. Yet he planned a scandal that would eclipse them all. He took a paper from the table, and glanced down the sporting column. It showed Vulcanite as favourite, Knight of Malta second, the Mandarin a strong third. Carne pictured the headlines: "Derby favourite stolen." By 9 o'clock he had transformed himself from an elegant gentleman into a sturdy, whiskered countryman and left the house through a secret back door. In half an hour he was at the 7 Stars Music Hall. Inside, Carne ordered a scotch and lit his pipe, settling in as if he belonged. As the clock struck 10, Carne shifted his seat to watch the door. Minutes later, 2 men entered. One, a shabby figure, greeted him warmly as Mr. Blenkins, introducing his companion, Mr. Brown, an American. Over drinks, their conversation wandered, until Derby betting brought them to business. Soon they left for a quieter room nearby, where, over whiskey and low voices, they spoke for some time. When they parted, appearances belied reality. The first man was collected by a sleek hansom, Brown by his own brougham, and Blenkins by another private cab, each bound for wealthier quarters than their shabby meeting suggested. Returning to Portchester House at midnight, Carne was pleased. Tomorrow he would proceed with the next stage, securing a van, furniture, and a trusted helper. His plans were cut and dried, and even in failure, he was sure he would remain free from suspicion. On the Monday after his meeting at the music hall, he went again to Melford's stables. Carne looked alarmed and showed William Bent a letter he claimed to have received that morning, an anonymous warning that someone might try to steal his horse. The trainer just laughed, recounting the countless threats he kept in a scrapbook, some demanding a bribe to throw the race, others promising to blow up the horse with dynamite if it even started to run. "Don't pay any attention to them, sir," he said. "I'll make sure nothing happens to Knight of Malta." At the trainer's house, Carne was warmly greeted by the man's wife. As it was already late, she invited him to remain at their house for the night. "Very convenient," he remarked to his valet, Belton, pleased to learn that the floor below their rooms was only kitchen and pantry. Over dinner, Carne's charm left his hosts certain they had never entertained a more agreeable guest. After dinner, Carne went straight to bed. 2 hours later, he dressed in a rough suit, drew a rope ladder from his bag, and slipped out into the night. Below, he waited for Belton's signal. A faint light vanished, a window opened, and the servant descended, black bag in hand. "There's no time to lose," Carne whispered. "You work on the big gates. I'll see to the other matter." Their preparations complete, the two men slipped back to their rooms without a sound. Half an hour after retiring, Carne was awakened by loud voices and a knock at his door. Bent, the trainer, spoke in urgent tones, asking him to come down at once. "An attempt's been made to get possession of Knight of Malta," Bent announced excitedly. At the stable-yard gates, he showed Carne a neat circular hole where the lock had been cut out, a craftsman's work, done with the finest tools. The horse, however, was unharmed. Bent was sure that his nightly round had scared off the thieves at the last moment. He pointed out the escape route, a ladder still leaning against the wall, and, beyond it, deep footprints in the turf. That afternoon Lord Callingforth, owner of Vulcanite, called on Carne to offer sympathy, having read in the papers that Knight of Malta had been stolen. Carne laughed, explaining that while thieves had broken in, they were scared off before reaching the horse. Relieved, Callingforth proposed a wager, £1,000 that Vulcanite would beat Knight of Malta, which Carne readily accepted. Conversation turned to Clemo, the famous detective, but Carne said he would postpone any inquiry until after the derby. Callingforth then invited him to the rooms to counter the false rumour. Carne's appearance there quickly steadied the market, and he took advantage by securing several favourable bets. His horse began steadily to rise towards his old position. "It is great luck," said Callingforth. "The race would have lost half its interest had your horse been put out of it." 2 days later, a shabby blind beggar appeared in Exbridge, charming stable hands into giving him food and securing a night's lodging from the rector. As night fell, he slipped away, walking without any sign of blindness, to a secluded copse, where he met a stable lad. The plan of action for tomorrow has been confirmed. During Vulcanite's morning exercise, the lad would pretend the horse had bolted, ride him off the downs into the woods, and deliver him to a meeting point at Hangman's Hollow. In return, he would receive £1,000 and safe passage to South America. The lad agreed, and was provided with a banknote. The beggar, none other than Simon Carne in disguise, returned quietly to his quarters. At daybreak, Carne slipped from his lodging and crossed the countryside to a copse overlooking Hangman's Hollow, where a furniture van waited with 2 men. The van's contents were a clever facade, dummy chairs, carpets, and chests concealing a hidden compartment fitted like a stable, with a manger and slings for a horse. Carne shed the guise of a ragged blind beggar and re-emerged as a respectable furniture remover, complete with wig, beard, and bowler hat. In this disguise he joined the men and waited. The minutes dragged until the distant thunder of hoofs reached them. Moments later, the stable lad arrived with Vulcanite, just as planned. Carne rubbed the animal down and led him into the van. The false furniture wall was slid back into place, sealing horse and boy inside. The van set off toward Beaton Junction, and soon an excited horseman caught up with it, asking if they had seen a sandy-haired boy on a thoroughbred horse. The news that the horse had bolted was already spreading. Carne feigned ignorance, and once the man turned down a side road, the journey resumed. At the station, the van was loaded onto an 11 o'clock goods train bound for Barworth on the south coast. There, it was swiftly transferred to the deck of the Jessie Branca, a steamer fresh from London. Below in the saloon, Carne received a substantial check for the horse. An hour later, the ship steamed towards Spain, while a smartly dressed, military-looking gentleman, bearing no resemblance to the beggar or furniture remover, waited at the station for the express to London. Arriving in London, Carne found the city in uproar. Newsboys shouted the sensational headline, "Vulcanite, the Derby favourite, had vanished from his stable." By morning, every major paper carried the Earl of Callingforth's advertisement, a £500 reward for any clue that might bring the thief to justice. But despite all the effort, the fate of Vulcanite remained a mystery, unsolved to this day. A few days later, amid the roaring crowds at Epsom, Simon Carne's own horse, Knight of Malta, surged to victory, winning the Derby by a neck, with the Mandarin second. When Carne led his horse back, a winner, he smiled softly to himself and murmured beneath his breath, "Valued at £20,000, and beaten in the Derby by a furniture van."